All right, guys, let's welcome Jesse Leach of Killswitch Engage back to the Talk to Me podcast. Jesse, how are we doing today?
Yeah, good brother. How are you?
Doing well, man. I wanted to start off. I thought this was kind of cool. A few years ago when we did the interview, actually when NotFest put it out, NotFest Iowa 2022, they actually played our clip on the jumbotrons there. So if you can see on the screen, there's
Oh
us
yeah.
kind of chilling, and it almost looks fake. Every time I post stuff like this, it always looks like it's one of those just computer generated graphics or whatnot, but it was kind of cool. It was like 30,000 people watching me and you talk.
Killer. Yeah, super exciting.
Right. It was funny. I ran to I was back in the back doing some stuff for the Twitch stream. Then I went up to the front to get a couple of photos, and the guy standing next to me, and I go, "Man, this interviewer sucks." And he goes, "Yeah, I know." I was just like,
Perfect.
"Well, that backfired on me."
Clueless.
All right, man. We are here to talk about the consequence, man. And as an avid Killswitch Engage fan, man, I am not disappointed at all. Like it is a killer record.
Oh, thank you, man. I appreciate that.
Um, Obviously it's not out till February 21st of 2025, but I've been diving into it the last couple of days, man. Let's dive into a couple of tracks. Um, Forever Aligned, obviously the first single off of it, which is a crazy track to kind of come out on. This is the first single in 5 years, and this is what we're getting, man. The whole album is a little bit darker. It took me a second to get into it, man. It's real dark, it's real angry, it's real aggressive. But once again, still loving it.
Thank you. Yeah, I think angry, dark, and aggressive, for better or for worse, is kind of what the world needs right now. I think, therapeutically speaking, I think a lot of us can relate to frustration, anger, betrayal, all those things, and that's kind of what I highlighted lyrically with this album, is really focusing on that stuff. But I will say this: if you really read into the lyrics, there's a positivity through a righteous anger, anger that wants to sort of wake people up and have people choose their own path instead of just the blind leading the blind, which is what we see so much in society, in our governments, and organized religion, and all these things that control us as people. It's very much about breaking out of the matrix, if you will, and carving your own path. And there's a righteous anger underneath all of it, and that's where the positivity lies. But I think with metal music, the great thing about it is you can talk about dark stuff, and it is therapeutic. That's why a lot of us got into this kind of music.
Yeah, and the one lyric in Forever Aligned that jumps out to me every time is "Now my tongue must confess." I was like, it's fun wordplay, man. I love that line.
Yeah, I'm always weaving in and out of, I was raised by a minister. I was raised in a Christian home. So, even though I don't subscribe to organized religion anymore, I like using biblical words here and there to sort of tie in the themes. I'm very much a believer in God, if you will, in general. I know people roll their eyes when other people say that, but my journey has been such where I've just seen much deeper things that I don't think can be defined by a particular human organized religion. And Forever Aligned is about that. It's about love. It's about, first and foremost, the song was inspired by the love I have for my wife and the relationship we were able to have during the pandemic, especially, where it's just the two of us, nobody else, and like really learning what love and sacrifice is, and then weaving that into like what I believe God is. God is love. Keep it really general for people to understand. We can try to tap into that as humans, that word love, but it's far beyond human comprehension. So that song is very much about being broken and in a dark place and finding salvation through love.
When you bring up a bigger, higher power and things like that, and obviously, I grew up in the South in a Southern Baptist home, and went to church and all that, the all the whatnot, and growing up around that early on, I realized I was like, I don't know if I'm into this or not. I could tell I really wasn't into the whole, going every Sunday and just like this is the rules and blah blah blah. But I mean, I agree with you on there's definitely something bigger out there than we can think of, because anytime I go to question, is there a God? Isn't there a God? Is there the right, the wrong, all that stuff? Once you get down to just the why, like why are we here? What's going on? Like how do how are we created? And you just kind of go back, and it's definitely overwhelming when you definitely fall down that rabbit hole in your own brain.
Yeah, I think existentialism is important for us as humans. You know, I- Even just here in my new house where I live in the middle of the forest, looking up at night and seeing the gases of the Milky Way and shooting stars on a regular basis.
Mhm.
How can we be the only thing? I
Right.
think that's such a short-sighted, even if you're not talking about God, like the amount of civilizations that probably exist elsewhere. Who are we to think that we're the only ones? That just blows my mind. So for me, I'm open to all of that. I'm open to, like, what do we know? At the end of the day, the older I get, the less I realize I know. And the more I travel, the more I meet people, the more I realize how much we have in common. And a lot of people just at the end of the day want to be loved and want to know what their purpose is. And that's what I'm all about with my music and with just my everyday life, like questioning, wanting to know the truth, seeking answers, not being defined by this box that society or religion or being political puts you in, where you put these blinders on, like, I'm this label and that's it. You've automatically sold yourself short for the beauty and the possibilities of existence.
Yeah, and I think partly what you're talking about too is obviously, just going through this last presidential election and like people are this or people are that. And I think a lot of us are just kind of down the middle. Like we like some of this, we like some of that, treat everybody fairly, all that, there's so much going on that you're either super, conservative or super liberal. And I think 90% of us are probably somewhere in the middle. I think we're all kind of just down the middle and just like you said, everybody just wants to be loved.
Yeah, I think there's so much divisiveness between, it all started for me, like really seeing the craziness of the pandemic and then wars, how people are so polarized on my flag, this, like, how about just no war? Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's crazy to me how people bicker and fight and are distracted on a regular basis about being this thing or that thing. And you're right. I think a lot of people sort of go down the middle and say, that makes sense to me. That doesn't make sense, or vice versa.
Mhm.
And that's how you should be. You should be thinking for yourself. A lot of people, from my experience, you're raised in a certain environment. You believe this way. My house votes Republican. My house votes Democrat. My dad told me this. Like, being indoctrinated into a specific thing is dangerous. I think people get comfortable with saying that I'm this and this is me and digging your heels in the ground and going, I'm not moving from this point. And I'm here to say the more I've moved in my opinions, the more I've been open to suggestion, the more wisdom that I've gained, the more hope I have that, there's more to life than what we've been taught. There's more to life than what we can discover, even just on the internet, because there's so much false information and divisiveness. So it's a matter of me personally, like meeting people, talking to people face to face, having these face to face conversations with people where you see their body language, you can sort of understand where they're coming from more, having a discussion opposed to an argument. And I think we argue way too much as humans, and we're missing the point.
Yeah, and I think the internet too is just opens up a can of worms that I think a lot of people aren't that would never they would never act like that in real life. And we actually just had this discussion on a separate podcast about everybody hated this quote unquote Pantera reunion, but the shows are sold out. Like there's online, everybody hates it. At the show, everybody's having a great time. And I'm assuming, Killswitch probably gets that too. Oh, I hate this band, but yeah, the shows are sold, they're very well sold out. You know what I'm saying? Um, you definitely get a different world online than you do face to face in real life.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, people just want attention. They want to be heard, even if it's a negative comment, the quote unquote trolls. At the end of the day,
Yeah.
a lot of those guys or girls or people just want to be heard.
Yeah.
And I've interacted a few times here and there with trolls. It turns out, they're like, "Oh, I'm just kidding." They do all these backpedaling. I'm like, dude, I don't care. You can not like me. You can prefer somebody else. It's fine. Just, it's hysterical to me. You're right. There's a bravery behind a keyboard and behind a screen, even, where talk to me face to face. I'm pretty available. Like, I don't hide in my tour bus or hotel rooms or dressing rooms. I love engaging with people. Even if I don't agree with you, I'm curious. Like, why do you think that? Like, tell me what's up. Where do you come from? And I feel like if you have that conversation with people, you have a lot more mercy for them. You sort of, like, it's less about like hating somebody because they don't agree with you, and more like, okay, I see where you're coming from. I totally don't get it. I don't agree, but I can see why you would think that.
And I think you have a different perspective too for obviously traveling the world. over and over, and kind of seeing different cultures and different societies and different just the way people live. And then obviously you probably get an outsider's opinion too on America. It's like when you go to certain places, I'm sure people love to give you their opinion on, like, oh, I hate America because of this, or I would love to go to America because of that. So I'm sure you kind of get it from all sides.
Yeah, I think it's important. Anyone who hasn't traveled outside of, if you're from the United States and you haven't traveled outside of the United States, it's interesting to see the perspective. Like you said, some people love American culture, think it's amazing, and other people think we're, just spoiled, fat, overprivileged people, violent people, which
Yeah.
some people are. But I'm quick to say that's not everybody. Like that's not everybody. This country is incredible because of the people. I don't care about the government and politicians and presidents. To me, they're all just puppets, and it's a dog and pony show. It's laughable to me, honestly. But when you get down to the people of this country, I've met, most people I've met are incredible, beautiful, caring, intelligent people. And yeah, this country's great. But traveling is awesome. I love seeing other cultures. Not just to compare, but just to be immersed in something that's completely out of your element. It's cool, it's exciting, and then you eventually get used to it. It's kind of a buzz, like, knowing that I'm going to go back to a city that I've been to before, and this particular restaurant, or this really cool cathedral that I sat in, and listen to a choir sing, like all that stuff. That's some of the really good stuff about touring, is being able to experience other cultures.
Do you still have those moments when you sit in a cathedral and you're like, how did I get here? Like, how did all this happen? I'm just Jesse from from back home, and our silly band kind of got us here.
I think that a lot. I actually had a lot of those moments recently. We were over in Australia and New Zealand with Iron Maiden. And you just walk on stage, and Melbourne, Australia, had 21,000 people, sold out 2 nights, and just go from that to the quiet of your hotel room and just be like, what is my life right now? This is
Right.
insane. Walking down the hallway, and there's Bruce Dickinson. He's like, hey, lad, that song's a fan of you. Like, oh, cool, yeah, how you doing, man? And like deep inside, I'm like, ah. But you have to just maintain, like, this is what I do. But no, 100%, I am not a jaded old prick. I'm still very much excited, engaged, and sort of there's wonderment still within me, and just feel so grateful that I get to do what I do. And you mentioned cathedrals, because I love going to old cathedrals, and especially over in Europe and Northern Europe. And there's something about it. I don't know if it's just because I was raised in the church, but to me, I like the idea. And I've gone to mosques. I've gone to Buddhist temples. I like places where people go to worship, to show reverence for something. There's a real feeling that you get for some of those buildings when you're just in this area where people are putting out this energy, whether it's wanting to know life's answers, or grieving a loved one, or getting married. Like, all that energy gets caught in these physical buildings, and I love going and being amongst them. One of my favorite things to do is going down to the basements where all the bones are, and the dead people. It's
All right.
the goth in me. I love sitting in those cold, dark rooms and just breathing and meditating, and having a moment, especially when I'm on tour, amidst the chaos, when you can go find a quiet place to be that's ancient. I love that stuff.
And when I see older buildings, and obviously being in the States, our old buildings are new compared to what you see overseas and things like that. But you just sit back and you look at even just the architecture. You're like, how did they do this? Because you see a building being built now, and it takes forever, and there's all kinds of scaffolding, and there's cranes and everything else going on. But these older cathedrals are, built 5, 6, 700 years ago, and you're like, how did they do this? Because it's beautiful, and it's beyond comprehension, I guess, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, and there's character to it too. I feel like a lot of modern architecture is sort of cold
Hmm.
and angular, and just not as inviting. Where you go into a pub in England that was built in the 1600s, like
Right.
the old Crown in Birmingham is a good example. And then the building itself is like on a lean. The floorboards creak. There's a scent when you walk in the door of, like, beer that's been drank there for hundreds of years, you know, pot pies that have been in the oven, you know, the fireplace that probably hasn't been cleaned in like 20 years. That I love that stuff. I'm super in love, you know, with old structures that have personality and smells and scents, and bailing up to a bar and ordering a drink and just sitting there and taking it in. That's awesome. I love that shit. But yeah, architecture is another big one for me. I love old Gothic architecture and imperfections as well. I love imperfections in architecture.
Yeah, and I think to me, I'm like, how is not every building that was built 500 years ago 500 years ago not leaning to the left, you know? It's just like that stuff blows me away. You had talked we I think the last time we talked, you had still lived kind of out in the woods and had a creek and all that good stuff, and you bought the new house, kind of living out in the woods, man. So just I mean, I'm currently living in the woods too. So I grew up always wanting to live in a downtown above a Chinese food restaurant with a, shitty little apartment or whatnot. But the older I've gotten, man, that being able to go outside and look at the stars and just relax and just kind of have some peace and quiet, man. It's really nice out here.
Yeah, yeah, I've gone further into the woods since last we spoke. I just moved. I literally just settled in the past month in the middle of a national forest. It's, you know, a 20-minute drive to even a gas station. But yeah, I can walk out my back door within 50 steps. I'm in the river. It's my section of the river. No one's coming on that property. And there's something really incredible about that. You having moments of absolute stillness and then going out at night and hearing the coyotes hunting, or,
Mhm.
you know, a horned owl calling in the distance, or a fox screaming, you know, stuff like that. It's freaky. And you're like, wow, I'm really out here. But at the same breath, I love that. You know, I'd rather deal with wild animals than people on a regular basis, especially when you get back from tour and the
Yeah.
chaos. And, you know, you're in a bunk where 2 feet away from you is another guy, and the dressing room's crammed with people, and everyone wants to talk to you. And you come home to a quiet place in the forest. It's like proper like decompression. So I get to do that on a regular basis when I'm not touring, which is great. But it also makes going to a city that much more fun. You know, you go to a city, you're like, whoa, this is what do we do next? There's so many things to do.
I can just walk anywhere and get food. This is
Yeah,
crazy.
which is dangerous, especially when you've had a few drinks and it's like 3 in the morning and you eat something. Oh, it's the worst.
Yeah,
Never,
definitely
never a
the
good idea.
yeah, definitely the older I've gotten, the more I'm just like, if I eat, I'm like a gremlin. If I eat after midnight, there's no telling what's gonna, pop up the next day.
And the next day you just feel like, oh.
Right, right. Back to the record band. The one track that's jumped out to me, and hopefully it'll eventually be a single, is Aftermath. Like it's catchy as hell. Um, and there one time when you say "My Life" in there is the most real I've heard vocals in a long time when you're screaming "My life," and I'm like, he means that. You're not just saying that. Like whatever is going through your mind that day, like came out on record, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, the line is, I'd give my life to save you. Yeah, it's a desperate song. That song to me, so Justin wrote that song, our drummer. He sent it as a demo. I wrote that within 15 minutes. Like it's one of those few songs that
Mhm.
just it came out of me immediately. I heard that punk rock two-step sounding chorus. I was like, yo, I know what this song's about. And, you know, going back to the top of our conversation, it's very much about going through like a very dark, tumultuous time, very much like the pandemic, or, you know, you could equate it to warfare, or coming out of a dark relationship, abuse, you know, all those things. We get PTSD, and we have to sort of like learn how to carry on. Like, how do you move forward? And then you look back on your regrets and like, what could I have done different? Like, if I could have changed this with all my might, I'd go back and change it. You know, those feelings that linger when you come out of a dark time. And I think anyone can relate to that. But yeah, when that chorus came to me, I was like, this is good. You know? And I sent
I
it along, and all the guys are
Yeah.
like, yeah, that's good. Adam's like, great job. And I was like, sick, which is always nice to have, because truth be told, this album was very difficult for me to write and sort of find my inspiration again. And even vocally, you know, learning new techniques like the vocal fry and trying to add that into my old technique and still sound like me. It was a long, hard process, but Aftermath was one of the few songs that just boom, 15 minutes done. And that was it. We didn't change much.
With the vocal techniques, are you talking about like working with like Melissa Cross and like getting her kind of getting some different voices out of you?
Yeah, I it was something that I was, especially after my vocal surgery in 2018. I relearned how to speak differently. Like, I speak differently than I did. I'm more measured. I make sure my voice is placed in the right place. And through that, it went into my vocals, my singing, especially. I was really focusing on my singing first and foremost to stay in key and, not go flat or sharp. And then it was like my screams were, I was so paranoid. Like, I was really worried about, we do 3 shows in a row. That fourth show, I'm like, it's getting difficult. I can feel the swelling happening, and so I was really studying vocal fry because you can do a lot of cool stuff with fry, but me with my voice, it has such a signature sound to it, I guess, according to Adam at least, that if I just went into that new technique completely, the lows were missing something. My yelling, it was different.
Mhm.
So I was going into these demos just doing fry, saving my voice, especially thinking that, once I get to the studio, it's going to be fatiguing. We're doing 4 or 5 hour sessions, but I kept falling flat and the voice just didn't sound right. For some of the high stuff, it works. Like you said, my life, that word life is a vocal fry scream. But for the lower mid stuff and for the death metal growls, like that's all old school, what they call, what is it called? My terminology is off here.
Hmm.
Fry, and then it's the other term. Anyway, anyone who studies vocals knows it's the old school way, like the way we all started doing it in the late 80s and early 90s. So I've learned, thankfully, through a lot of trial and error, and this album had a lot to do with it, to blend the styles. So I can do my old school stuff, and then I can sort of blend in some of the vocal fry to hit those crazy maniacal sounding highs without it destroying my voice.
Um, you're talking about, when you go back and you think about changing certain things and you're like, "Oh, if I were to go back, I would make this decision or I would go and make that decision." And the one thing that I always fight with myself on that thought is like there are certain things I was like, "Man, if I go back and I could change this and if I would have made this decision back then." But then you start thinking about like, well, probably wouldn't have met my wife. Probably wouldn't have my kids. You start kind of placing everything that wouldn't have happened if you made a certain decision. And that's like when you start fighting with yourself, fighting your inner self when you start thinking of like, that's one regret I have, but is it truly a regret because I have all this other stuff now?
Agreed. Yeah, I don't live with regrets. I really don't. I think it's a waste of time, but of course there are moments in your life where you think, what if, what if I hadn't done that stupid fucking thing I did, or, what if I hadn't done this to this person? But you're right. It's a chain reaction, isn't it? I mean, every day you wake up, you have a choice to make, and I choose the present moment. At least I try to. You can't live in the past, and if you're living with regrets, you're hindering yourself. Because what's the point? You can't change it. So you wasting your energy on that is a waste of time. Like, but it's hard. Life is difficult, especially if you've gone through it or you've done things or said things that, like, like, I hate myself for that. You just got to keep pushing forward, and maybe don't make those same mistakes moving forward with the new people that you're surrounded with, a new situation, a new career. Like, learn your lesson and change your behavior. Then regrets won't really weigh on you as hard.
Just kind of getting back to the new record and stuff. When Forever Line came out, it actually made me go back and re-listen to Atonement again. Um, and I once again just hate that that album kind of got lost to COVID. It kind of got lost in the pandemic because it came out obviously like right when it started and then kind of fell away, man. But that's obviously, going back to it, a great album to go back to.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, I do regret.
Right, very good. Damn you.
Now, I am a little bummed that it didn't get the love it deserved, because I do love that record, and
Yeah.
we all worked really hard on that record. Um, but we can still tap into some of those songs and pull them out. And if anything, that record gave us the duet with Howard, Signal Fire, which we still play
Mhm.
live. It gave us I Am Broken Too, which is a song that means a lot to a lot of people. So, I have to just focus on the positives and the fact that we did make that record and we put it out. We felt successful with it. But yeah, I think had we have toured on that record and gave it the proper support that it needed, it probably would have done a lot better for sure. But that's what makes this record even more important because now we're getting ready to like go full on with this record. We're booked solid for next year, and I can't wait to get out there. I'm gnawing at the bit to do this new stuff. And with the Killswitch set, you're always going to get the hits. We can't not play certain songs, but we've all decided that for this next cycle, we're going to lean a little more heavy on the newer stuff than we have before. And I think that's important for us to progress, and also just to show fans that like we're behind what we're writing. We're not a nostalgic act. Like I think the conviction behind these new songs is worthy. It's passion. We're not resting on our laurels. We're not phoning it in just so we can continue our career. This shit is real. It's life and death. There's blood, sweat, and tears in this music, and can't wait to get out and start playing these songs.
Is that something you guys kind of took from Iron Maiden? I don't know if the Iron Maiden was doing that on the shows that you guys did, but they've been known, like if they put out a new album, they are playing a ton off of the new album, and they, you might miss some hits, and then the next tour they might do a greatest hit set. But they every time they put out an album, super focused on that album, and you're like, so what? You wanted to hear some of the classics, you're going to hear what we're doing now.
Yeah, I think that's important to do. I think and I think Bruce Dickinson says this in an interview I watched recently with Rick Roll. Don't let the fans dictate. Like the fans want you as an artist to show them what you care about. Point them in the direction that you're going. Don't allow the fans and their opinions of you continue to sway you to one side. Like, a band that just plays the hits, that's great. That's fun. But your audience is only going to be so big, I think, or your regular audience will show up, but you're not going to get a ton of new people in the door unless you're showing them something exciting, something current. At least I hope that's what we've done with this record, is give people a taste of who we are right now. And I think who we are right now, we're all grown men. We see the world differently than we did 10, 15, 20 years ago. And it's important to continue to inject that into the music to let people know, like, this is who we are. You can follow us or, just keep listening to the nostalgia. Either way, we're stoked. Just come to the show. But I think it's important to if you're a band that's been around for a long time, to continue to put out material that you believe in and show the fans you believe in it by playing it, for sure.
Final track I want to talk about on the new album is actually the last track on the album. The first listen through the entire time, Requiem, like hit me hard. I was like, oh, nah, that's an awesome song. So talk a little bit about Requiem.
Requiem is about, first and foremost, the solo on that song is Joel, and Joel doesn't take enough solos with Killswitch. He's such a great guitar player, and he has a very unique sound. That solo is what really made me want that song on the record, and I actually changed a few things and rewrote some stuff to ensure that would get on the record because of that solo. So I had to say that first. But yeah, lyrically, I mean, sonically, it's awesome. What a cool song. In my demo liner notes, I wrote Lamb of God because the first riff kind of reminds me a little bit of Lamb of God. But lyrically, it's about not giving up. It's about not allowing yourself to lay down and die. It's about fighting for something that you believe in. I initially wrote it from a place of, being in a relationship and trying to find your way and like really wanting to know what real love is between two people. But you could take that and put it into any situation. Because, once you write a song, you can write it with a perspective that's yours. But once it's out there and people hear it, I'm more than happy to let go and just allow that song to be what it is for other people. I like the idea of me writing a song and someone going, this song means X, Y, and Z to me. And I'm like, in my head, I'm like, it's not why I wrote it, but I love that you've gone with it, but Requiem to me is just about fighting for something that you refuse to let it die. And I think that spirit is something that's beautiful about humans. We have that ability to have that tenaciousness and that determination to achieve things and to not give up on something or someone that you believe in. And that's, to me, the beautiful side of humanity, is that steadfastness that we can tap into.
Have you had that moment to where someone said, like this lyric makes me feel this way, or this song reminds me of this, and you in your head you're like, glad you don't really know what I wrote that about. Like,
Yeah,
because
no, definitely. I've had that a few times, more than a few times. But then you just have to like, it's not about you.
yeah.
It's not about you anymore. As an artist, if you truly are trying to live as an instrument through your art instead of just being an egotistical prick and like me, I, like if you're really paying attention to what inspiration is and how I believe that as an artist, I tap into something that's pre-existing, that's it's in the ether. It's in, I don't know, to sound hokey, but like I do believe that I'm an instrument. Whatever's coming through me is not just from me and my brain and my perspective. It's the collective, if you will, the essence, the energy of God and all of us can come through an artist if they're open to it. So that's what I try to strive. It's what I strive to do with my writing, is just let people feel a certain message. I think if there's conviction behind it, if you're genuine about what you're doing, the message is going to hit either way.
Yeah, and as much as I love music and I love, some of my favorite bands, I'm definitely not. I've never been like a dive into the lyrics guy. So sometimes I might hear a lyric and it might not even be the right lyrics, but I'm like, man, that's touching me today.
Sometimes it's the way that it's sung or spoken too, right?
Yeah,
I'm guilty of that as well. Songs I've listened to for 10 years and I've never bothered to look at the lyric, and I've just been singing the wrong line, and then I read it and I'm like, oh shit.
right.
He or
Yeah,
she's
there was
not
a
even saying that.
yeah,
But that
especially
made me feel something for 10 years.
when you hear like a cover and they sing it differently and you're like, oh,
Someone
okay,
enunciates it differently, and you're like,
yeah.
oh, that's what they're saying.
All right. Actually, I wrote down in aftermath, when you say I'd give my life to change this, the first time I heard it, I heard I'd give my life to Jesus, and I was just
Oh
like,
man.
it hit me weird, and I was like, had to rewind it, and I was like, oh, okay. Phew. He said, I was like, all right, Jesse, we're throwing out that, but yeah, the first time I heard that, I heard I'd give my life to Jesus.
But a bunch of Christians are disappointed now because they would hope that I would say that. I
Yeah,
get that all the time. Being a former Christian, I do get a lot of people who are disappointed that I'm not a full-fledged card-carrying Christian, which is okay. I get the disappointment when I was indoctrinated and I wanted everyone to be saved and all that. But I think it's important to respect people's
yeah,
journeys and not just shut them down because they have a different belief or a faith or lack thereof. It goes back to what I was saying earlier, like talk to people. Like, you want to know what I think and feel? Don't criticize me. Come talk to me. I'm available. I'd love to talk to you about, philosophy, religion, existentialism, because we could learn something from each other. That's what I think is important, man. Religions can sort of blind you. Granted, they're great and they help a lot of people, and some people would be dead without it. I get that. But also, it can really jade people and indoctrinate people to the point where they're willing to carry out violent acts in the name of. And that's the stuff that really concerns me, is the sort of what's the word? The extremism of it, where your belief dictates your actions so much so that you can take it in a dark direction and actually do the opposite of what your God is teaching you to do. If God is love and you're acting a different from that basic premise, you might want to rethink your beliefs.
right. Yeah, it's a mess, man. I'll go ahead and wrap up because I know you got something else coming up after this. So once again, the consequence out February 21st, 2025. And then you've got the tour starting March 5th with Kubla Khan, Fit for a King, Frozen Soul. And I was actually diving into the VIP on that the tour, man. And for what you get in a VIP and the price, it's cheaper than some of these bands going out and you just get a ticket. So I think you
Yeah, I
should.
think for the boys and I, especially those guys, they're really hard pressed to talk to management and whoever is the powers that be and say, if we're going to do a VIP, load it up. There's nothing worse than charging a bunch of money and then people just get the bare minimum just because you want to get an extra paycheck. We almost didn't even want to do VIPs, but the more we interact with fans, the more feedback we get. Fans want it. And if we
Mhm.
don't offer it, they're disappointed. So we wanted to make sure that if you are interested and you want to do it and you're going to spend your hard-earned money, you're going to get a shitload of stuff. So thanks for noticing that, man. That's cool.
Yeah, I was actually, when I read all the stuff and then I saw the price and I was like, there's so many tours popping up right now that, My Chemical Romance in the stadium, you're not gonna get a cheap, that you're gonna hang out with Killswitch Engage cheaper than you can go see My Chemical Romance at this point.
Yeah, well, yeah, they're in a different arena than we are, but for sure, I think it's important to interact with the fans and give back and not be dicks about it. Even when we play with bigger bands and they want us to charge more on our merchandise, we're super bummed. We always
Mhm.
try to control that stuff and keep ticket prices at a fairly low rate. But I get why bands do it, at the same breath, because it's very expensive to tour. It is not cheap, and bands don't make as much as people think that they do. So supplementing your income is pretty important. So VIPs help, t-shirt sales help that bottom line when you're out there just hemorrhaging money to be on the road. So I don't knock bands that do it, but there's a fine line between making some money to help the bottom line and ripping people off.
Yeah, and I think as a kid, I was the kid that would stand outside the buses and stand out there for 12 hours in the heat, and hopefully, the singer would walk by and shake my hand or something. So
Yeah.
I've always wondered like how I would have been in the VIP world if I would have still, been into going to, paying a few extra bucks to meet the band, or the scavenger hunt of like, oh, there's the bus. Ain't gonna,
Yeah, either way,
see
you'll
him.
meet me. If I see people at the bus, 99% of the time, I'll go right to you. Or I'll be like, hey, I'll be back in like 5, 10 minutes. If you're gonna chill, I'll be back. I
Yeah.
think it's important to do that, man. It's important to connect. Those people are keeping our career going. And a lot of the times the conversations you can have with people will change your perspective on what you do and make you appreciate your life. And I'm grateful to the fans. We all are. Everyone in my band, we are 100% dedicated and try to do our best to connect with fans and give back. And if we see people out in public and they see us and they get all crazy, it's like, yeah, of course you can have a picture. Of course, can get sign an autograph, or in some instances, of course you can buy me a beer. Let's hang out. Like, we're those kind of guys, and I
Yeah.
think it's important to not lose touch with recognizing you are where you are because of your fans.
Yeah. I think it was Dio that said, that you may not remember the fan, but the fan will never forget that moment, so you always have to have that in the back of your head, because there's nothing worse than you having an off day and then for the rest of their life that like, man, that Jesse Leach was an asshole to me that day. Like,
I'm having an off day. I'll tell you. Like,
yeah.
I'll literally tell you what's going on, and I'll still spend time with you. But I'll apologize and be like, "I'm sorry, I'm just off today." And then that oftentimes leads into an interesting conversation, and I'll start to feel better because someone will tell me how much their life sucks, and I'm like, "Wow, I'm sorry. How dare I have an off day?"
Right. All right, man. Well, appreciate you taking the time today, man, and have a good rest of your day.
Thank you, and thank you to everybody who supports Killswitch Engage. We truly appreciate it. Thank you, guys, and happy holidays to everybody.
You too, man. Take care.
All right, brother. Peace.